recording. And let me share my screen. Can I share my screen like just once for first time? Then
Yes.
later you can share it.
Yes.
You can see my screen.
Yes, Jackie, we can.
Okay. Okay, and you can hear me properly, right?
Yes.
Okay. So guys, welcome to Surat MuleSoft Meetup 39. And the topic for today's meetup is like pragmatic API led connectivity. So Josh will going to discuss about like API led connectivity architecture, when to use API led connectivity, and like and for what use cases you can you can go for API led connectivity, or you cannot go for architecture. So Josh will be discussing more on that. So I like to thank Josh for taking the opportunity to speak at the Surat, and thank you so much. And like we appreciate you taking the time out and to speak in the Surat MuleSoft Meetup. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let me start with a safe harbor statement. Both the speaker and the host are organizing this meetup in the individual capacity only. We are not representing our companies here, right? This presentation is completely or strictly for the learning purpose, and we are not holding any responsibility whether that solution will work for your use case or for your business requirement. And presentation is not meant for any promotional activities. Let me go start with some housekeeping. So recording of this meetup you can find on the event page within the 24 hours. You can ask question at any time. You can, like, we have opened the mic for everyone. And even you can, if you are hesitate to talk, you can always use the chat window, for asking the question. We will monitor the chat window and we will pick the question from the chat window, and you can give us a feedback at the end of the meeting. It's very important for us to get a feedback, and we can improve ourselves in the future. And also you can propose a future topic for the meetup. And if anybody want to become the speaker in the future, they can contact us, they can contact the organizer, myself and the Nitish. Okay. So I will not going to introduce myself, I will just skip the introduction. And Nitish, I will just skip the introduction. We have done introduction for many
Yeah.
times, so let
Yes,
me do the,
Jackie.
yeah.
I was thinking the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So Josh, like now you can take the session from here. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Josh. So I will
Thank
just
you.
unshare my screen.
Okay. How much time do we have? Is 1 hour, 1 hour and a half?
Yeah, you can take one. You can take up to 1 hour 15 minutes or something like that. 1 hour 20 minutes. That's fine.
Okay, okay, that's fine. Okay. I don't have now the share button. Ah, yeah. Okay, yeah. I had the share button right now. Okay. 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 Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
Josh.
that's fine.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, well, thank you everybody for joining this session. My name is Jose Ramon Huerga, and I'm participating, in the MuleSoft community as a MuleSoft ambassador, and also as a meetup leader in Spain, in Barcelona. Currently working as an architect in Cognizant. I hold the three certifications that are at the moment. No, let's hope that soon we will be able to do the level 2 of the developers. I also did the courses, delivery champion and go to market champion. Okay, well, and probably all of you already know Cognizant. No, is one of the biggest global system integrators. No, with a lot of employees around the world. Okay, so today we are going to talk about how to design APIs, and we are going to talk specifically about API led, exactly, about when is a good idea, to follow strictly the concept of the three layers of APIs in API led, and when maybe to go only with process API and maybe create experience API or system APIs, when needed. Okay, we're going to show some use cases. Okay, and well, let's probably I think that we are going to have conversation and questions, because obviously this is just just my opinion. I'm totally sure that with your experience we will find other different use cases that maybe are not reflected here. So I don't know if you know this, but today API-led connectivity is a paper, no, that well that it was written a long time ago. No, it was more than seven years. Okay, probably 7 years ago. No, obviously APIs were already there. No, and there were already some very good, no, API management solutions. But obviously, I think that in these 7 years, no, the situation has changed a bit. Okay, I think that this paper, as you know, has been very successful, and I think that a lot of integration architects, a lot of developers has adopted, no, the concept of API led, and even competitors. It's not strange that other software vendors that does not have anything to do with MuleSoft, they are already talking, no, of API led, and they are suggesting, no, to use the integration tools to also follow the API led connectivity. No, I think that we are going to see that in this presentation. I think that is a really powerful concept, a really powerful architecture, and we are able to solve very complex problems applying API led. But however, on the other side, I think that it got very popular, especially people that is starting with MuleSoft and is their very first project. I think that sometimes they just create 3 layers, no, but because of not any reason, no, and not only that, you try to talk with these people and say, hey, why are you creating 3 layers, no? They start, no, complain, no, like, okay, no, this is a mantra, this is what I was taught, no, in my training or in my certification. So no, don't ever mention, no, the possibility of creating just one API or two APIs, because that's a taboo. You are creating a monolithic application, no. So I think that there is a lot of people that is blindly following this mantra, no, and obviously when you just apply, no, the same solution again and again, no, maybe, no, is no, that can be a risk, no. So let's see, no, and obviously this is an oversimplified example, no. I think that it's not a real case, no. But let's see, no, how typically people with little experience in MuleSoft, no, uses API led, no. So for example, imagine that you are a developer that has started, no, working with MuleSoft, no, and you had to address this user story, no. In that, for example, an invoicing manager wants to read in SAP contacts. Those contacts are stored in Salesforce. So essentially, this end user, what wants is that when he's creating an invoice in SAP, that person wants to check or to find the address or the contacts directly in the UI or SAP. No? This is a very simple user story. Maybe it's not providing a lot of details, no, but imagine that that's all we have to know, all the information that we have, and there we start the developing, no? the development on this, no. So with only this small paragraph, can you imagine, no, what the average MuleSoft developer, no, especially a person with very little experience, is going to propose, no? And I think that, as you probably guess, that person is going to propose exactly this, no. I mean, that person only have a few details, no. He knows that has to communicate SAP with Salesforce, that has to read contacts, but I'm totally sure that hundreds, if not thousands, of developers are going to propose exactly this, no? No, a process layer with a contacts API, no, with the typical endpoints, no, to get all the contacts or to retrieve a specific contact. But for some reason, this person is going to create another system API, no, with exactly maybe the same endpoints, no, and in addition, an experience layer, no. I think that nobody has told to this person know that, well, which is the consumer, or if that consumer has any specific requirement, but probably a lot of people is going to create 3 APIs, no, and that's all, no. And if you try to convince to this guy that why the experience API, where the system layer, probably, no, they are going to say that that's what they had been told to do, no. So when, as a developers, we need to to defend, no, which is why we are doing this solution, no. Essentially, probably a lot of people is going to say that this is for reusability, no. the only way to get reusability is creating a lot of APIs, no? 3 APIs, 4 APIs, whatever. That's the only way to get the reusability. And also, probably this person is going to say that, well, that's essentially what the senior guys has told or has talked to these people, no? Obviously, this is where the problems start, no? Because that's fine, that's nice, but probably maybe the project manager is going to start complaining, no? Like, hey, okay, but you were supposed to expose contacts from Salesforce to SAP, and you have consumed whatever, no, 0.3 beacons or 0.6 beacons, no, depending on the size of the worker and the number of replicas, no. And this is yes for a very simple use case, no. Why, no, consuming so many beacons, no? Or even, no, the enterprise architect, no, one that, no, this person start looking at the code. That person take a look, no, to the Experience API, to the Process API, to the System API, and they are just pass through, no? And why, no? Why do you have to call to system to one API? This API will call to another API, and finally to Salesforce. So those are 3 network jumps just to retrieve contacts. Why, no? It's not MuleSoft supposed to provide a lot of connectors that make things very easy. Why do you have to create so many APIs, no? And not only that, finally, the infrastructure operation, no, that are more close to the system, to the network, no, they are talking, well, they essentially complain, no, you are adding a lot of latency, no, instead of whatever 200 milliseconds, no, this is 700 milliseconds, 800 milliseconds, because you are doing a lot of invocation. And now, if you need, for example, to add a new field or to add a new query parameter, then you have to repeat the same action in 3 layers. No, why are you doing that? No, so obviously, as I said, this is an oversimplification. Okay, I think now that things are not as simplistic as this, but I think that probably you have recognized in this in this use case a couple of situations that you have experienced in your real projects. Okay, so I think that we need some kind of going back to the basics, no? And I think that one of the very first things, no, that we learn when starting with the computer profession, no, is the principle of keys, no? Keep it simple, stupid, no? Obviously, no, things are, no, if things are not broken, no, why trying to fix that, no? And obviously, no, I think that it's clear, no, that the software solutions work better, no, when they are simple, no, because the more artifacts you include in a solution, obviously, no, the more moving parts that are there, it's more easy, no, that you will introduce, no, more sources that can include bugs that you need to fix, no. And it's always a good idea, no, to avoid unnecessary complexity. Okay, so by default, I think that we had to go, no, with the simple possible solution. However, as we are going to see in this presentation, API led is a very good idea. It's a great architecture, but we need to apply API led specifically in the cases that is required. No? So instead of blindly following API led, let's go, and this is what I'm proposing in this presentation, with a more pragmatic approach, no, and trying to apply API led only when it makes totally sense. Okay. So I think that no, after all these years, no, of API led and together, no, with RESTful designs of web APIs, I think that it's a good idea to go back, no, to the basics, no, and take one step back and talk about, okay, how to design, no, RESTful reusable APIs, no. So this is the most classical pattern, no, regarding APIs, no, and this is one of the most popular, no, and it's essentially, no, the API gateway pattern. Okay, this has been forever, no, several years ago, no, before the API-led concept was introduced. Okay, in which essentially we had consuming applications, no, in the top, for example, mobile application, a single page application, Salesforce or any other software that is running as a service, and obviously trading partners, no, third parties that wants to consume APIs, no. And this is essentially the standard pattern, no. We have an API gateway in which we're exposing APIs that are very well designed, that they are very highly reusable, and that essentially they are just applying security on top of other systems. So typically, for example, we will be creating APIs on top of, for example, microservices architecture, or we are going to create whatever, no, APIs on top of legacy ERPs, legacy CRMs, or even mainframes, no. And I think that this is something that sometimes we tend to forget, no. We cannot, or we should not be doing logic or business logic in the APIs, no. I mean, MuleSoft is a great platform. It's a low code environment, no, in which just by dragging components from the palette, you can no you can create very easily a lot of transformation, but that's not exactly business logic, no. I think that there is a lot of languages, no. For example, Java is a very good example in which using a microservices architecture, you can create very complex logic, no, very tailored to the business need, no. So I think that that's one of the very first rules, and sometimes we tend not to forget about that APIs is about security, no, not about business logic, no. And obviously, another thing that is crucial, no, is that these APIs typically, no, most of them, maybe 90%, are going to be internal, no. I mean, in most of the cases, we are going to to create these APIs, so they are going to be consumed by other applications, no. But other times, and this is something that we are going to explain later, those APIs are used to communicate with trading partners, no. In that case, probably we are going to need sometimes a different security, no. So, and this is no, what about, no, or what makes a RESTful API, no. Essentially, no, and this is something, no, that all of you are very familiar, no. In a RESTful API, we are going to see these elements, no. First is the versioning, and this is something that sometimes we tend not to forget, no, that any API gateway in the world is going to be able to support different versions, no, the same API, no, the version 1, the version 2, the version 3, okay. So, and that's and I think that that's one of the cornerstones of the reusability, no, because you have a lot of customers using the version 1, but in case, no, that you had commit any kind of mistake and you had to go with the version 2 of the API, you can still have the previous consumers, no, using the version 1, no. Another thing that sometimes we forget, no, is, okay, in an API, the very first thing that you have to create is the entities, the resources, okay, which are the core business entities that this API is exposing, okay. In this case, for example, is customers, for example, and it has always to be a noun and in plural, okay. I have seen a lot of API-led diagrams in which some of the resources are not nouns, no. Instead of customers, is something like, for example, get order status, no. It's like, okay, why are you using an API manager to create endpoints that look like a SOAT operation, no? I think that no matter if we're using MuleSoft or any other tool, we need to keep on using, no, the good RESTful API best practices, no? And in this case, we need to always think in resources, okay? And they have to be nouns and in plural, okay? And in addition to that, another thing, no, is obviously not the operations, no. In this case, is get, post, no, and usually APIs are very well tailored, no, for CRUD operations, and also we will have entities, no, that are specific elements of a collection, and another thing that are the nested resources. Okay, so with the same API, it's totally okay to have a main entity, in this case customers, and a second one that is addressed, that is associated to this API. Sometimes I have seen a lot of MuleSoft API-led diagrams in which they create different APIs, no, one for customers and a second one for the addresses of those customers. No, it's like, why creating so much complexity? No, if we had the concept of SAT and nested resources that are part of a bigger collection. Okay, so I think that only with the standard features that are expected on any API, I think that we have a lot of tools, no, to foster that reusability. Okay, and obviously, no, obviously this API will have, no, the definition, no, of the different objects and entities that this API is about. Okay, so if we just create APIs and use these best practices, I think that just one API we are able to do, no, or to get a very high level of reusability, no, especially, no, if you follow some basic best practices, no. For example, if you just create new body parameters in a response, or you just add new resources and methods or optional headers, okay, then you can still maintain the version 1 of your API forever. Okay, the different consumer applications are just going to ignore those new resources and methods or those new parameters in the response. Okay, so the same API will be able to support different use cases. Okay, and this is something that I have seen in a lot of MuleSoft projects. No, sometimes they have an API and they create two experience APIs just because one is for a customer that is going to consume that API, and another API just for another customer that is going to consume the same API. And why they are creating two experience API? Because they say that, well, this is tailored for this customer. This is with this, I'm going to to guarantee that we are not going to break, no, the feature, no. And well, sometimes that's not true, because as you have seen, you can evolve the version 1 of a new API, adding new resources and new methods, and you don't need to care about which are the consumers that are using that API, because the old consumer will use the existing resources and the new consumers will be using the new resources that you're introducing. There is no need to create only a experience API for each consumer application that is going to, no, to use your API. Okay. Obviously, there are also rules of things that you have to avoid. No, for example, removing resources or rename those resources, or converting parameters that were optional to be mandatory, or for example, decide that all the dates are going to change. No, and now this string is not going to be the year, the month, and the day of the month. No, it's going to be totally different. No, so in that case, obviously, you are going to break the compatibility, and in that case, unfortunately, you will have to create the version 2 of the API. No, obviously, that has to be only the last resort. No, if we can go with the version 1 of the API for a lot of years, that's nice. No, obviously, if we had, no, to make a very serious change, no, like changing the dates format or changing the ID format or things like that, then in that case, no, you will have to go with the version 2 or 3. But again, we are using an API management platform, so that still is not a very big problem, because obviously any API management solution is going to support running several versions. Okay. Another thing that is also important, we should be focused on creating APIs that are going to be the building blocks, the reusable elements that will allow the company to very quickly implement new use cases reusing existing APIs. So when we are creating APIs, we need to forget about the backends, and if this is SAP data or is PeopleSoft data. I mean, we need to focus on the business entities that make any sense for for the business users. And another thing that is crucial is to organize these APIs into different functional domains. And I think that this is the most important thing that we need to do. Forget about this is system, this is experience. No, just focus on the domain. Okay, and avoid creating APIs that are not associated to clear business concepts. No, for example, in this screen, this is an example of a bank, no, in which you have the domain for the accounts, for the loans, for the rigs, and for sales. No, and in that case, what you have there is APIs that are reusable, and for example, in the case of accounts, no, you will have an API for the position, for the account receivable, to diagnose the fraud, okay? But those APIs does not have anything to do with the real backends that have the logic, no? You need to focus on the functional domains. In this case, no, the idea is to have APIs that are associated to domains or to business capabilities. Okay, sometimes I think that domain and business capabilities is almost a synonym. Okay, and it's recommended to follow, for example, a domain-driven design approach. Okay, essentially this is about defining an ubiquitous language that is structured around the domain model, and it's going to be used by the team members in that bounded context. Okay, so the idea is to focus on splitting the different business entities in domains and in APIs. Okay, if we are able to get to this situation, then this is not what sometimes in the last months we are referring to composable enterprise, no, in which essentially these companies that had these good reusable APIs are able not to implement new use cases, essentially assembling these APIs. No? And this is getting very big. It's not only specific of a company. I think that all of us are working in companies of different industries, and in those industries, there are starting to appear standard models. No? For example, in the case of airlines, we have, for example, the IATA Open Air, or in case, for example, of telco, we have the TM Forum, Open Insurance. In the case of banking, we had Bayan and PSD2. So we are starting to see a movement in which there are like standard APIs per industry. Okay, so I think that is important, no, to try to focus on how to create those reusable APIs that anybody can clearly identify which is the which is the feature that those APIs are exposing. Okay, and obviously the idea is to publish this API specification in an API developer portal. Okay, so I think that this is what anybody is expecting, no, from your from an API management platform, no, is to see essentially these reusable APIs, no, and not see as is very common today, no, all these APIs now that are like system whatever, experience whatever, that's no. I think that introduced a lot of confusion. No, I think that what people is expecting is to see APIs that match exactly with business entities. Okay, I think that that's the most important. I'm not saying that only with this core or business APIs we are going to have all we need for to create an application, because obviously if we only have business or core APIs like this, sometimes it's not going to be very easy to build, for example, a specific mobile application or a single page application, no? Because, for example, imagine that you are creating a new React application and you need to consume 3 core APIs, no? And you need to consume those 3 APIs just to draw in the in the screen a specific field, no, or different fields that are coming from different core APIs. Obviously, if you try to invoke from React to the 3 core APIs, sometimes you are going to get, I think that maybe not very good response times, no, because essentially maybe you are reading the data from the first core API, and maybe once you have that information, you have to go to the second API and the third one, no. So maybe that's very chattiness, no. I think that is, and it will be a good idea to introduce something in the middle that can help reduce this chattiness, no. Today, I think that most of I think that in the industry, no, this backend for front-end pattern, I think that most people is trying to use GraphQL to implement this kind of APIs that essentially are helpful for a single page application or a mobile application to have a single point in which, with just one call, you will get all the information that you need for that particular page. Okay. Okay. So having said that, no, now I think that we had to explain, no, the importance of going with functional domain, with business capabilities, with core or business API that are highly reusable. Okay. So what now? What happens now with API led? No. if you start a new project, you should go with the I will say more academic or more standard approach, of creating core APIs, business APIs around functional domains, and sometimes maybe some API that are doing backend or front end, or you should go with the API led approach. No? It's something that you have to decide. You have to use both. In reality, it's the same model. No, let's see that in this section. Okay, so the very first thing that we need to do, as we said before, is to focus in just building core business APIs. As I said before, this is our main activity. So essentially, this is the only mandatory layer. I mean, if you are not creating business APIs, you are not creating core APIs, then obviously, you are just implementing maybe point-to-point integration, or maybe you are just implementing, I will say, tactical integration that are only interesting to fix a particular use case. I think that the most important thing is to try to, when we are implementing any particular integration, to try to think in which is going to be the very best core API or business API that is useful to implement that use case, but will be useful in the future, maybe adding new resources or adding new methods to implement future use cases. But we need to focus on this layer. Okay, this layer can use any connector to connect to backends, because at the end, as we said before, these core APIs are nothing more than security layers that grab existing systems. Those systems can be, for example, Java Spring Boot microservices. So in that case, we just need an HTTP connector, because typically a lot of microservices that we are creating today, they are already RESTful. So all we need in these core APIs is essentially to use those HTTP connectors to interact with those systems. There are still some systems like, for example, SAP, in which, although today they are investing a lot of money creating OData APIs, but today, I think that a lot of projects are using other connectors, for example, invoking BAPI or iDocs documents. So in that case, sometimes, we will need to use these proprietary protocols and connectors to grab or to invoke to those backends. Okay. And sometimes, and this is a concept that we're going to explain later, maybe we will need to invoke an intermediate API, but not by default. I mean, if we have a connector in MuleSoft, and with that connector, we can hit a backend, why trying to create another intermediate API and then put the connector in that intermediate API? I think that is a misconception. I think that a lot of people in working doing MuleSoft projects, they only use the HTTP connector in the process layer, and they think that there is some kind of law or rule that prevents to use other connectors in the process API, and I think that that's a mistake. Okay, so how to map this in API led? How to implement these core and business APIs? Well, the bad news is that in API led, they only mention experience, process, and system APIs. So where is the concept of core or business API? I think that the only concept that more or less match what's a core API or a business API is a process API. Okay, but I think that maybe it's not the best word, because a process for everybody is like a sequence of steps. But we had said that a core API should essentially interact with an existing business logic. So if you are just doing a call, for example, to a COBOL application or to a Java microservice, where is the process? It's not a process. You are not invoking two systems and doing an orchestration. So I think that, unfortunately, today in API led, we don't have a very good name for a core or a business API. And the most close concept that we have is process. Okay, so at the end, I think that the only mandatory layer, probably will be the process API layer. Okay, but it's important to remember that this is not about process; it's more about reusable core business APIs. And another thing that is important is that with MuleSoft, and I think that this is very good news, we can very easily distribute the APIs in functional domains, because we have the business capabilities concept. Okay, so it's very easy, to essentially, to divide or to create to divide in the endpoint subscription different business groups. Okay, we can create a business group for accounting, a business group, for example, for sales operation, for rigs, and then put in those business groups those different APIs. No, so I think that that's a good solution, and also we can use a Mule worker naming convention, adding, for example, 3 or 4 letters for the domain. No, I think that could be a good idea. No, so this is a valid software architecture. Okay, so I think that for a lot of people, if you don't see the experience API or the system API, maybe somebody might think, no, that this is not a valid software architecture. But guys, yes, this is perfectly valid. I mean, you had a lot of consumer applications, you have different backends, and you had in this case business and core APIs. So you can perfectly invoke to these process APIs, no, with from any consumer application. That's something that if you don't have any other requirement, why not letting the trading partner, for example, to consume, for example, the accounts API that you are exposing? I think that this is something that if we don't have any other further requirement, this is something that we can start creating right now. Okay, and I think that this is very effective and very quick. Okay, so I think that this is, for me, this is the first lesson. I mean, focus on the business and core APIs and place that, no, in what MuleSoft calls a process API. Although process is not, maybe it's not the perfect name for a core API. Okay, so I'm saying, no, that the concept of system API is, well, it's not mandatory, it's not a good idea, it's always a good practice to invoke directly to the backends, no, from these core APIs. Well, I think that probably we are now in 2022, and I think that the situation today is very different, the situation that we had 5 or 10 years ago. No, I think that 5 or 10 years ago, probably a lot of backend systems were based on proprietary protocols. No, and I think that today in 2022 the situation is changing. No, and I think that today you can take any commercial of the shell software solution, any SaaS or any other software, and I think that today most of these solutions are already exposing a REST API. Okay, you take, for example, in this case, SAP. No, SAP today is starting to expose a lot of OData APIs. So you don't really need today a connector to interact with SAP because you have a REST API. And if you take any payment systems or any other CRM or any other ERP, they are already exposing REST APIs. So if those backends are exposing a REST API, well, just invoke that REST API. You don't need to create another system API that is just a pass-through or a copy of that payment API that is already perfect. No, why creating a new API to interact with Google Maps, to interact with any API of AWS if there is already good APIs? No, so I think that in the incoming years we will see that to interact with a lot of backends, we just need to invoke the REST API. Probably in the future, all these proprietary protocols and connectors probably they will disappear. However, system APIs can still be very useful, not only today, but only in that future, no, in which everybody will be using REST APIs, no. And I think that there are a lot of cases in which creating a system API can make a lot of sense, no. For example, to address security, to improve the error handling, to reduce complexity, and to improve third-party APIs. Okay. We are going to see that in the following slides. Okay. So, for example, imagine that you are interacting with a backend. No, it can be, for example, any SaaS. No, and you discover that SaaS, in order to allow you to interact with that API, you need to give them the IPs that are associated to the Mule workers. Okay, so in that case, how to solve this? No, because if you try from the process API to interact with those backends, and you have, for example, 3-4 core APIs that are trying to use the same backend, then as this backend is whitelisting the IPs that are allowed to interact with that backend, then you will have to provide the IPs, the static IPs of all these different core APIs. Okay, and as you know, today static IPs are a very scarce resource in Cloud Hat. Okay, if you have, for example, in production 10 vCores, you are only entitled to create 20 static APIs. Okay, static IPs. Sorry, and that's a problem. Okay, because with only 20 static IPs, then you can only whitelist 20 workers. Okay, and that's no a very small amount. No, so how to solve that? I think that in that case, the best plan is to create a system API. Okay, that is focused on invoking to that backend. Okay, and then that mark that worker to have an static IP. Okay, so essentially the process API will be invoking this system API. This system API is the only one that has this static IP associated with that. Okay, and then when that system API is interacting with this SaaS solution, then it will use the AWS EC2 public IP that is associated to that worker. So you can whitelist those IPs in the SaaS. Okay. So I think that in this case, using a system API is a very good idea, because if you don't do this and you have, for example, 6, 7, or 10 core APIs that are interacting with the same backend, you will have to whitelist 10 IPs, which obviously is a problem. Okay, so in that case, this is a very good use case for a system API. Another case, for example, is when dealing, for example, with security issues. Okay, so for example, it's common that some of these backends, imagine that, for example, you have a backend that is exposing a lot of business endpoints. Okay, but to interact with that business endpoint, you need first to get a token, an OAuth token, a GWT or whatever of that vendor. Okay, so for example, in that case, if you try to interact with that backend from multiple core APIs, then on each of these core APIs, you will have to write the logic to get the OAuth token, and then use that OAuth token that maybe can expire in a couple of minutes or hours, to use that token to interact with the business endpoint. No? So in that case, if you are using the same SaaS backend in different core APIs, then you have to write the same logic. Maybe you will create a common flow or something like that, but at the end, it's something that you need to repeat in different process APIs. So maybe in that case, it's a good idea to create a system API that takes care of that. No? And for example, you can invoke that system API using a client ID or secret, which is very, very easy to codify. And then maybe in that system API, you can use an object store to store an OAuth token, no? And automatically, when that OAuth token expires, get a new one. No? So that's one example in which, for these security issues, using a system API is a very good idea. And if any of you have ever worked with AWS APIs, probably you already know that invoking an AWS API is very complex, because they don't use a standard OAuth token or client credentials. What they do is that when you are invoking an AWS API, you have to follow a very complex task that is to create a signature. And in this signature, you have to do a lot of things. You have to take all the query parameters, sort the query parameters, apply a URL encoding, do the same with the headers, and with that string generate a signature that you have to send together with the payload. No? So imagine that you have to interact with any AWS API from a lot of core APIs, and you have to replicate the same logic, no, creating this signature. No, that will be a a very bad idea. No? So in that case, for example, it's a very good design to create a specific system API to deal, for example, with those AWS APIs. No? In that case, I think that you are going to save a lot of code and effort. No? There are other examples, no, in which it's a good idea to use, for example, a system API. No? Imagine, for example, that you have a complex requirement in which you want to implement like the warranty delivery mechanism in which a source system is going to invoke a core API, and that source system does not care if the backend is up, is down, is receiving the response, but you have to guarantee that at the end, eventually, the backend is going to receive the invocation. No? So in that case, it's also a very good idea to create a system API to interact with that backend, no? Because all the core APIs are going to use your API to interact with the backend. And in that case, in case that the backend is down for any reason, then it's very easy to, from that system API, to write a log, for example, in Splunk, and then write in any point enqueue a new message that contains all the payloads, all the headers, all the query parameters that were used to invoke this API, and then later have a retry API that every 30 minutes, every hour, whatever, tries to, well, to take those messages and invoke again the same system API, no? And maybe after a couple of hours, then the backend is going to start answering. No? So in that case, again, no, this is a very good example in which obviously you could invoke from the core APIs directly to that backend, but if you want to implement this retry mechanism, it's very easy when you have a system API in the middle in which you can, no, you can store this information in any point enqueue. No? So that's another example in which, no, the solution gets better by using system APIs. No? Another interesting use case is when you want to reduce the complexity. No? We have said that today we can assume that a lot of SaaS applications are producing or are exposing an API, but sometimes those APIs are not very good. No, maybe they need a lot of steps. Maybe you need to make a call, then take the output, do some transformation, and maybe invoke a second step. So in that case, if you need to repeat those operations in a core API, then essentially you are repeating the same code again and again. No? So in that case, if the SaaS is exposing an API, no, that is very complicated, maybe it's a good idea to create a system API just to route those transformations operations. No? And in addition, if you are working with the Gflow methodology, with for example, with the feature branch and things like that, that's another important thing, because if you have a lot of complexity, maybe if you had to deal in those core APIs with that logic, maybe all these feature brands are going to be more complex. You are going to have a hard time, when merging the chains. So in that case, everything gets simplified, If, for example, you deal with that logic in the system API, so all the chains required are going to be in a branch, in a feature branch only of this system API, and then the logic that interact with this system API will be in different branches, in different feature branches, but of the core APIs, but that they deal only with the top level operation and not with this logic that is repeated again and again. So in that case, this is another good example in which no matter that the backend is already exposing an API, maybe in this case, it's a good idea also to create a system API on top of that. Okay. And finally, and this is very related with the previous one. This is something that is also very common. We have a SaaS backend, for example, that is exposing a RESTful API, but that API is not very RESTful. For example, imagine this case, in which, in theory, this backend is exposing an invoice API. However, for example, they are not following the minimal the minimal RESTful conventions. No, all the operations are called using the post. They are adding the birth in the in the resource. No, so instead of get invoice, delete invoice, or post invoice, they had this post read invoice, post delete invoice. No, unfortunately, this is sometimes very common, no, in some software as a service application. So in that case, if we don't feel comfortable interacting with that ugly API from the core APIs, maybe it's a good idea, no, to grab a system API that makes introduce more sense, no, and for example simplifies the resources, uses the right methods, and maybe you can manipulate the fields, because for example in this ugly SaaS API they are using capital letters, no, and maybe that's not aligned with your conventions, no. So in that case, again, could be a good idea, no, to have an API that, for example, modifies all the dates, all the strange formats, and maybe implement better HTTP codes, because sometimes these ugly APIs, sometimes they just return always a 200 message code, and they maybe in the body they introduce a message with the error, no, which is not a very good practice, no. So I think that in that case, creating a system API can be a good idea. No? Okay, so this is for system APIs, no. But what about the experience APIs? No, is the same? We should avoid creating experience API. Is there any case, no, in which using an experience API is justified? No. So as we said before, it's totally okay that a consumer application directly invokes a core API. No, if you have a third-party provider and you have an API for orders, well, you can let that third party to invoke directly your other APIs. No, there is nothing wrong with that. Okay. However, the same that is happening with system APIs, there are very specific cases in which creating experience APIs is a good idea. But, and this is another thing that is very important, maybe those experience API are only going to be created maybe after months or years after the core API has been created. I mean, as I said before, we need to focus on the core APIs. And sometimes when those core APIs are in place, maybe after a couple of years, when a consumer application wants to interact with those core APIs, in that moment is when maybe appears the new requirement to create an experience API. Okay, but I think that is a mistake to create the experience API the very first day, although you don't have a specific requirement for that experience API. Okay, so in which cases is no, maybe it could be a good idea, no, to create those experience APIs. No, so for example, in this case, I have identified 3 different use cases in which maybe you can create an experience API. No, one is the backend for front-end pattern that we had discussed previously. Another is adapting to specific software as a service systems, and also for security purposes. Okay, so for the backend, for front-end, I think that we have already mentioned that before. No, so sometimes we have 2 APIs. No, for example, we have a core API for customers, and we have another API for contracts. Okay, and maybe those API has been there for years, and they are very useful. A lot of systems in the company are using those those APIs, but you are the company is going to create a new mobile application, or is going to create a new React or Vue application, no, an SPA. So in that case, in this particular use case, we need in the SPA to have in the single page information about the customers, okay, and also information about contracts, no, because we want to display all the contracts that are associated to a particular customer. So in that case, for sure, we can use React and make a call directly to the customers, retrieve all the customers, and then make a call to the contracts. No, okay, but those are two calls. No, it will have a mechanism that by doing a single call we can retrieve all the information. Obviously, the performance is going to improve. Okay, and that's precisely all about what we can expect from an experience API, especially if we use GraphQL. No, so by doing just a call, we can get all the information. But it's not only that. For example, this customer API that has been in production for several years maybe does not have all the features that a modern React application may need. No, for example, maybe this process API or this customer API is returning the whole list of customers, which is not a good idea, no, in a mobile application, no. And maybe in this mobile application or this React application, we need additional parameters, no. For example, we want to have the ability to to specify how to sort the customers. It can be by name or it can be by location, or in this React, maybe you need to specify how many customers to get on each query. No, it can be 5, 10, 15, whatever. No, and also filter. No, maybe you want to filter by a specific field. No, so in that case, the existing customer application maybe is focused only in maintaining the customer list, modifying, deleting, or whatever, but maybe that API was never designed to handle with this pagination or these filtering parameters. No? Again, nothing is preventing us to add those pagination fields or parameters in the core API. And maybe it's a good idea, no? Because if this consumer application, this mobile, needs to find customers, for example, by city, by name, why not adding that feature, no, in the core API, no? So, I mean, it's not that if you have this, no, this pagination or these advanced filtering abilities, you need always to create an experience or a GraphQL API, no? You can always do that in the core API, but I think that in this case, maybe it's a good idea, no, to implement all that logic in this experience API, okay? But as I said before, this is a lot of more than just a pass-through. I mean, we are creating this experience API not because this is a pass-through for the process API. No, it's because it's adding a lot of, I will say, user interface logic. No, maybe this experience API will take care of invoking the process API, and then maybe it will try to use data weave or something like that, no, to filter the information. No, so in that case, it's not just a pass-through; it's something that adds a lot of value to the organization. Okay. So this is one example. And another example in which an experience API is maybe it's a good solution is when dealing with software as a service applications that are not very customizable. Okay, imagine, for example, that you're using a commercial off-the-shelf software that has the ability to do a call out. Okay, that has the ability to invoke a backend, but for some reason that software as a service is not very well designed, no, and does not have a lot of flexibility of how to send different payloads or how to send different parameters, no, and maybe this SaaS is only able to do a call out, and it's going to use always this payload. Okay, for example, imagine that is a solution that is around contracts, okay? And you have already a contracts API, no? And your contracts API is exposing or is returning the information in this format, okay? Contracts, duration, and start date. If the software as a service system is not very flexible, maybe what they are doing is that they are sending, no, or they are expecting a payload that has to be exactly like this, no? For example, with the contract details, instead of contract is saying using topic, instead of a start and duration, they need an init date and an end date, no? And it's not flexible, no? So in this case, again, maybe it's a good idea to use an experience API that is specific to this system. Okay, so this system will be invoking the experience API. The experience API will be invoking the existing process API, the existing core API, and then we'll do the transformation. So this flexible software will get the information as they are expecting. No? So this could be another good example of a play or of a solution that in which an experience API is a good match. Again, as we said before, maybe another solution could be to modify the process API, the core API, and add, for example, a new query parameter, no? In which, in that query parameter, you can specify a different view. In that case, doing that, maybe the SaaS could be invoking directly the process API, and then the process API, by adding a query parameter that is obviously optional, then the process API will be returning exactly the same payload that the SaaS is expecting. No? That's the reason that I explained before that APIs has been designed, or the API technology has been designed with the reusability in mind. No? So by using those kind of optional query parameters, you don't really need an experience API to do that. No? So I mean, in any problem, no, there are different solutions that you can apply. No? But I think that in this case, no, creating this experience API could make sense. Okay. Another example, for example, is regarding security. We had seen before examples in which a system API can deal with security, and we can have the same for experience APIs. No? Imagine that you have, for example, a contract API that has been working again for a long time, okay? And for every contract is returning this data, no? The title of contract, the duration in month, the start date, and also the price and the currency of the contract, no? And this is okay, and we have a lot of existing backends that are using this core API, okay, and everything is working nice. But imagine that we need to enroll a third party, in this case, a trading partner, that wants also to get information about contracts, okay? But as the price maybe is a sensitive information, we don't want the trading partner to get access to those fields, okay? So again, there are multiple solutions for this problem, and some of them is, for example, to use an experience API, okay? So in that case, the experience API will be interacting with the core API, will be getting all the fields, and will remove the sensitive information to be sent to the trading partner, okay? So that could be a solution. So you're exposing an API that is not returning or delivering to the trading partner information that maybe is not a good idea to share with them. Again, you can always avoid creating this experience API. How to do that? Essentially going to the process API and trying to add any kind of logic, that depending on the consumer application will remove those fields from the response payload. Okay, but maybe that could be a bit complex, because how to decide if you want to remove or not those data, because this process API maybe all this core API knows is that it's getting a call. Maybe there is no identifier, who is the call, who is the caller application. So maybe that's not very easy, However, by creating an experience API, it's very simple, because essentially, is this experience API that the one that is going to have all that logic, and also it will know that all the consumer applications that are using that experience API, they don't need that sensitive information. Okay, so maybe in that case, it's a good idea to go with an experience API. Okay, and I think that this is the last example. Another case in which using an experience API could be also a good idea is, for example, when we are using for the whole core APIs, maybe we're using only client ID and secrets, or maybe we are just using, for example, basic authentication, and we had the requirement to expose information to maybe to internet or to other applications. And in that case, we want to go with a better security mechanism. Imagine that in this company, OAuth or job tokens are not used massively. They only use client ID, secret, or basic authentication. So in that case, maybe it will be a good idea to expose an experience API that is protected with standard policies of MuleSoft, no, like OAuth protection or JOT validation. Okay, so in that case, essentially, the mobile or the single page application will be interacting with an OAuth API, will get the token, will send the token to the Experience API. In the Experience API, we will have the OAuth or the JWT policies enforcement, so they will validate if the token is okay. And then this Experience API will use the standard communication mechanism for this customer that, as we said, is client ID or secret. Okay, so in that case, this is another with example in which creating an Experience API is a very good idea because maybe it's not easy to configure a core API with the client credential policy and the OAuth credentials policy because it will try to check or to execute both kind of policies, which will be a problem. No? So in this case, separating this kind of security policies is a good idea and a good justification for going with experience APIs. Okay, so now I'm going to showcase a couple of examples. I don't know, maybe Jackie, you want, maybe we can, if there are any questions, maybe we can answer some of them. Are there any questions? I had seen in the chat some of them, but I think that Jackie, no, you have also been answering some of them.
Yes, George, actually, he gave the answers in chat. So in the end, we can take some. You can continue, please.
Okay, that's fine.
So like
Okay,
just like people are saying you are going great. So it's a great you're going great actually, So we don't have many questions. So there is some extra discussion in going in chat. So yeah. So Josh, you can continue. Like if there is any question, I will let.
okay, that's fine. Okay. So okay, so we had seen, no, in theory, no, which are the typical use cases, no, in which we had to focus on core APIs, and we had seen a few examples in which creating a system API or a Spring API is a very good idea. Okay, so let's see that together in an example. Okay, so imagine that you are working for a pharmaceutical company, for example, and this company has several systems. Maybe they have some legacy Java application that are exposing web services. This customer is also using SAP. They have a lot of software as a service application that they are subscribed to, like Salesforce, Workday, Coupa, and they are also investing creating new Java Spring microservices, and they have deployed those microservices in Kubernetes. No, in this case, in AWS EKS. Okay, and this customer is using MuleSoft or is going to use MuleSoft Cloud Hat to create APIs. No, so for example, the first imagine that this is the first 6 months of the project. Okay, and for the initial budget of this customer wants to use that money to create some laboratory APIs to write the logic, of these microservices that they are creating. Okay, so they want in this case a laboratory API. They also want to implement a payments API, so they will be able to use those payments API across different applications. And now they have a payments provider that is PayPal. Okay. In addition, they have a lot of entities in SAP, like for example invoices or contracts or whatever. But they want to start in these initial months, for example, exposing and order APIs. No? Also, they want to create a warehouse API, and the idea is for that warehouse API to consume some of the legacy Java backends that they have, but those Java backends are exposing SOAT. No? And finally, the idea is that Salesforce will be one of the first third-party systems that is going to consume those APIs. No? So with these requirements in the backlog, how to implement this, no, in MuleSoft, no. So for these initial months, maybe what we can do is to create this laboratory API, okay, and then for this laboratory API, directly invoke the Java microservices that are in Kubernetes, okay, and those Java microservices are already exposing a REST endpoint, no. So with MuleSoft, what we are doing is implementing a layer of security, no. Also, when looking at the PayPal API, we notice that this PayPal API is very well designed. No, it's a very it's a RESTful API with a lot of good endpoints, methods, attributes. No, so it's an API that is very well designed and documented. No. For SAP, in this case, we decide to go with one of the SAP connectors that are included with the subscription of this company. Okay, and finally, to interact with these legacy Java applications, we are going to use the standard MuleSoft Web Service Consumer. Okay, so for this initial solution, maybe we can go with this architecture. Okay, so essentially, we need to focus, as we said before, in reusable core business APIs. Okay, so which has been the concept or the entities that have been mentioned in the requirements. No, so essentially, if you remember, the requirements are to expose laboratory APIs, payments APIs, order APIs, no, and warehouse APIs. No, so that's it. Okay, essentially, we need to create those APIs and try to think in which are the perfect resources and operations that are associated with laboratories, with payments, and so on. Okay. For the microservices in Kubernetes, they are already exposing REST APIs, no, or REST endpoints. So essentially, all we have to do with the laboratory is to create as many resources as make sense for this use case, and for every endpoint, just make a call to the Java microservices that are running in Kubernetes. Okay, that's all. Okay, so with the HTTP request connector is done. No? For the payments API, we have a discussion because somebody wants to create a system API that will be something like PayPal API or system API PayPal, something like that. But when we start analyzing the PayPal API, we detect that why creating a system API, because essentially in that system API we're going to create, for example, the endpoint payment or the endpoint invoice or whatever, and it's just a pass through to PayPal. So why creating that system API when we can directly from the core API, for the core payments API, we can invoke directly to PayPal. So in that case, we're going to just to use the HTTP request. The same happens with Invoice API. Okay, we have a lot of discussion, and sometimes somebody proposed to create a SAP an SAP system API, because that person argues that it's better to interact with HTTP requests, but looking at the SAP connector, we find that it's very easy from this API, from this core API, to interact with SAP, because all we need to do is to take the connector from the palette, drag in the flow, and essentially with just a transfer operation, we can take exactly the information that we want about invoices in the process API, in the core API. So we're creating an SAP system API. In that case, we just decide to create to use or to define an invoices API, and when that API needs to read an invoice, it will use directly the SAP connector to retrieve that data. And finally, the same thing is happening with the warehouse API. In this case, this warehouse API does not have a backend that is exposing a REST API. This Java legacy application is exposing a SOAP endpoint, but we quickly find that the web service consumer connector that is already included in MuleSoft is also very, very simple to use. All we have to do is identify which is the WSDL of this web service, identify a couple of operations, and just transfer the output from XML to JSON with just a transfer operation. Okay, so with just two connectors or with just two message processors, that is the web service consumer and the transfer, with just two elements, we are able to invoke a web service. So why creating a separate API that makes the transformation between SOAP to REST? No? So in that case, in this, I will say, pragmatic solution, this is the final architecture for this first iteration of this customer. So the APIs that this customer is creating for the initial 6 months can be something like this. Okay, and now we go to the second phase. And the customer is happy, start using all these APIs, and the communication with Salesforce and SAP, for example, for SAP is totally successful, and they are very happy with MuleSoft, and they want to implement new use cases. So in this case, the new use cases that the business introduced in the backlog is that now they need to create an expenses API. Okay, but the problem is that the backend that is exposing that is implementing that feature is exposing a complex and very bad design API. It's very different to the API, for example, of PayPal. And the API of PayPal is very well designed. However, this expenses backend is the API has a lot of problems. In addition, customer needs also a credentials API to interact with secrets that are in AWS Secret Manager. However, there is not yet a connector in MuleSoft for AWS Secret Manager, so we had to use the APIs. But the problem is that the APIs of AWS, they need to sign, to add a signature to every request. Okay, we could be using the AWS Java SDK. Okay, but in this case, we decided to go with the AWS APIs. But the problem is that we know that it's not very easy to make a call to AWS Secret Manager, because maybe we need to make a call to AWS STS to get, for example, to assume a role in AWS. With that, maybe we need to do a couple of calls to AWS Secret Manager, but we need to add a signature, and that's very complex. Okay, and finally, business want also to include an employees API that will be taking employees information from Workday, but the guys of Workday, they say that they will never allow us to make a call to Workday without having the IPs well listed in Workday. Okay, so how to fix this? How to implement this? In the case of the expenses API, what we decide is to create only an API to grab that expenses API and encapsulate all the calls. Okay, so we will be like improving that API and changing a lot of resources, a lot of fields, because the original ones are not very well designed. Okay. For the credentials API, we also decide to create a specific API, because we don't want to repeat the same AWS signature code on every single core API. So in that case, we decide to go with a specific API. And finally, for this employees API, as we suspect that we are going to have to create a lot of Workdays, we are going to consume this employees API from a lot of different places, then we decide that maybe it's a good idea to create only a system API to interact with Workday, and then only whitelist the static IP of that system API. Okay, so this is the solution. Okay, we already have the laboratory, payments, invoices, and warehouse API. Okay, but for this new payroll feature, what we are doing is to use these three system APIs. Okay, the first system API is the expenses API that takes care of interacting with the SaaS, but it's not a pass-through. Okay, it's going to take every single attribute and it's going to change that, because the attributes maybe are in capital letters, they are not very well designed. And the same with the operations. the SAS is only maybe implementing the post method. However, with this expenses API, we are using the standard get, delete, pot, patch, whatever, no, the good methods. Okay. The same happens with the credential API. Okay, we create an API that is very easy to interact with that. Is just you can pass, for example, a key and it will return the secret, but that API takes care of dealing with AWS API and creating, for example, the digital signature. No? And finally, for the employees API, we decide not to create a system API, and then what we are doing is in Cloud Hat, we are marking that employees API worker to have an static IP. Okay, so no matter that we interact, for example, with Workday or with this employees API in different core APIs, the only API that has an static IP is this one. Okay, so as we don't have a lot of beacons, then this is a very good solution because we are reducing the number of workers that need an static IP. Okay, and finally, once that we have created all these,
Josh,
yeah,
quick question. Please go back to the slide. So the very first four stuff that we have directly calling from our core, or we so called is process API to our AWS EKS or people pay or SAP, right? So here the one problem is, where is the reliability?
what do you mean by reliability?
Means like we don't I don't see here the 100% message guarantee there. If something happen here, we lost the data.
Yeah, but you can lose the data also you have a system layer. I mean, the reliability comes when you are using, for example, any point NQ or any other message broker. I
Yeah,
mean,
but that makes sense. Like more the problem will with the first approach, because if we have a system API here, we can
mhm.
put our asynchronous system API, and then we can handle it properly, right? But calling directly, it's a big problem and big ask to customer to send the data again.
But yeah, but how will you implement reliability by creating a, for example, in this case, imagine that you had the payroll API that is invoking the expenses API, and this one is expenses the SAS API. And however, you have, for example, this laboratory API that is invoking directly the Kubernetes. So why is more reliable this approach of the payroll expenses API and SaaS than the laboratory APIs and Kubernetes? Why in your opinion, this one is more reliable?
See, the only thing is, let's suppose, for example, SAP system, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are
Yeah.
connecting through the connector,
Okay.
right? And customer Salesforce connecting with us, and they want to place something, the operations with SAP. And let's suppose the SAP system is itself is down, and they
Okay.
have create and they requested for us to do some process, right? But because of we have a one process layer
Yeah.
and system is down, we end up with the loss of the data.
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
will might be will implement our error handling such a way the system is down, but at the end of the day we lost the data.
Okay.
And customers say, I will not send it. It's your responsibility, you have to handle it, and you have to do the operation, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that case, what we can say, we can create a system API, we can
Mm-hmm.
put our message into the queue. If it is system
Yes.
down, we can put in a reliable way. If it is up, then it will automatically get processed. If we are dealing with the asynchronous process,
Yes.
if we are dealing with synchronous process, that we have to think in a different way.
Yes. That's correct. But that's because you had that requirement. No? And this is what we were mentioning here. I mean, in this case, in this one, okay? If we have, yeah, is what you said. If you had the requirement not to have a solution that is in this case reliable, and you want a retry mechanism, then it's exactly as you are saying. Okay, you can use these core APIs, invoke a system API that is the one that is interacting with the backend, and in that case, yeah, it's what you said. In the system API, you can add the logic to send the payload to any point NQ, and then essentially have a retry mechanism that will read the same message after 30 minutes or 1 hour, okay, and then retry the invocation. But yes,
Yeah,
it's you are right. Yeah, sure.
yeah. Just so a couple of things are there. Sometimes the most important integrations part is the customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
They just deal with us for the integration. They are not bothering about what you are implementing. This is our some best solutions we are giving our organization, right? But the
Yeah.
customer need a good experience on their end, and they don't want any hindrance or problem while sending the data or getting the response back.
Yeah.
If we are
Gajanan,
gonna, yeah,
I have one question. Why do you think like we can implement a reliable pattern on system layer only? Why we don't use
Yeah.
at a process layer also? We can definitely implement a reliability pattern at any layer. Like there's a no restriction on that, right?
yeah,
That's
So
correct.
like,
but
but why
as
you are
per the
thinking like in such a way like we can only implement a reliability pattern at a system layer? So
no,
Yes.
like
Jackie, I'm not saying this is only for system API. As per the solution proposed by JAWS, because we are only implementing a process layer and we expose to the client.
yeah, that's fine. Like even
Yes.
like with the process layer, you can implement the MQ there also on the
Correct,
process layer. And in my
correct.
case, what see whenever I implement the API-led connectivity architecture, most of the time I have implemented a reliability pattern at a process layer only because
Yes.
if I can see like most of the orchestration happen at a process layer, most of the logic handle at a process layer, right? So there is a most chances like a request may fail at a process layer also. Like there's a more like chances like some validation got failed or something got failed, so you have to save that message, right? And in that case like you can definitely implement a reliability pattern at a process layer. Like
Mhm.
it's not necessary you have to always implement a reliable pattern at a system layer.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. And in process layer, you can even do things that are far more complicated, like the saga pattern, no? In the saga pattern, you can implement these transactional
Correct.
and rollback no features. Yeah, that's
So
correct.
recently, like I was working with one banking account where I implemented this Saga orchestration pattern. So
Hmm.
where like we have one requirement, we are getting one request, okay, from the experience layer, and like we have to send that request to multiple systems. Like we have to create a customer information, then we have to create a account information, then we have to create again customer information into some CRM systems, right? And we have to ensure that there are some system which is transactional and there are systems some which are non-transactional also, right? So in that
mhm,
case I cannot go with the transactions because Salesforce, when I want to roll back data with the Salesforce, I cannot use the transactions, right? So
Yeah.
because it's not a transactional system, like only there are only three systems are transactional: database and like you have some JMS and there's a VM, right? So these are the
mhm.
some transaction system. In that I use the Saga pattern where I'm getting everything has done at a process layer, and everything has done using the any point queue, basically any point queue, so
Yeah.
with reliability pattern, if something goes wrong, the message get into a dead letter queue basically. So you can definitely implement your reliability pattern on the process layer also.
Yeah.
But Jackie, on the top of that, if you are putting your message in dead letter queue, you should have some sort of mechanism to,
Yeah,
then again a
definitely.
complexity comes in the picture. If you want to complex it, then it's
Yeah.
See, I will tell you simple example. You also want to make sure like your message get processed, it get you also want reliability. Then
correct.
definitely it will add the complexity into your architecture, right? You if you are keep on adding non-functional requirement into your architecture, definitely it will increase the complexity of your architecture, right?
Yes. That's correct. And but the good news is that we are talking about complex requirements, no? Like in this case, the reliability pattern, no? So that, and that's my point, no? I mean, we need to go with extra artifact, no? Like process layer, system layer, or even the anypoint enqueue, because we had the requirement that the message has to be totally warranted, the delivery has to be warranted, no? So in that
Mhm.
case, yeah, sure.
And
Maybe, and is like Jackie said, no? And maybe you need even to implement something more complex, no? Like the saga pattern. That's correct.
Gajanan, like your question is valid, and I appreciate for that. So you asked
Yeah,
this question, and it is a very valid question. You
yeah,
get this kind of questions from the customers also.
Yeah, because why I'm asking this, because it seems like we are directly eliminating the system API, and in our API-led connectivity, it's a very important role for
See,
system APIs
yeah.
and
So I will
process
tell you,
layers.
Gajanan. API-led connectivity is a architectural style, right? And you can
Correct, correct.
implement in any way, basically. Like, it's not
Right.
necessary. There is no hard and fast rule for this API-led connectivity. Yeah, they have defined some kind of like approach, and like how you can use for your customer, that you need to think. It completely depend on your requirement and completely depend on your needs, basically.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying is we have to first understand our customer requirement. Based on
Mhm.
that, we have to play accordingly. If we are complicating our one application, that's again a problem. If we are using too much APIs, then it's again a problem. So we
Yeah,
have to come
Yeah,
up with the balanced out stuff
correct.
that will
yeah,
make our life easy and our customer life easy.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, you are right.
That's correct. That's precisely in this example. That's the reason I'm putting the specific requirements. No, so in this case, for the phase one, nobody is talking about reliability, and nobody is talking about, for example, while listing IPs or no, or APIs that are bad designed. No? So in that case, for those simple requirements, okay, we can go with this solution. But however, in the second phase is when things start getting complicated, no, because in that case this AWS secret manager is very complex to use, and also no, we have these security requirements about Workday. No, so in that case, when with that requirements is when we had to no to apply in this case a specific artifacts specifically to deal with those no with those requirements. No, and the same happens no in the with the third phase. No, for example, in this case now the customer no is satisfied no at the moment with the APIs that has created at the moment to interact with the backends, but now it finds that it has several requirements to interact with third party. No, and the first third party that they find is a software as a service application that is Coupon, and also they want to create a new mobile applications, okay, to interact, for example, with the payroll data. No, problem with Coupon is that at least this version of Coupon, they cannot use the same API that they have because Coupon needs a very specific payload to work, no, and that's a problem. And in addition, when they start defining or designing the mobile application, they find that they need to do a lot of very complex paginated search. No? So how to implement that? No, for Coupon, they find that well maybe it's a good idea no to create an experience API that is going to tailor specifically no the existing payload and modify that so Coupa can understand that format. Okay. And for the mobile application, they decide that maybe it's a good idea no, to give a try to the new GraphQL engine of MuleSoft. No, in this case, data graph. No, so this could be no the solution for this requirement. No, in the case of Coupon, there is an existing invoices API, but as we have mentioned, Coupa is not able to invoke this API because Coupa is always going to send exactly the same request and it's always expecting exactly the same JSON payload. And however, unfortunately, that JSON payload is not the same that we are using today in this invoices API, that the one that is expecting Coupa. Okay. As I said before, we can always create a new parameter in this invoice API and add, for example, a view specific for Coupa. Okay, and obviously that's on the table. Okay, but in this case, we had decided to create a new API only for this channel. Okay, and finally, for the mobile application to solve this aggregation or this pagination, then we decide to go with endpoint data graph. Okay, so we could be using directly the warehouse and the payroll API, but the payroll API, for example, is not able to mix data of different system or expose no as in a nice format, so React, for example, can invoke that. No, so in that case, we decide to give a try to the new endpoint data graph, and essentially we create an schema for this mobile application that typically is using as two source systems, the process API for warehouse and the process API for payroll. Okay. So that's essentially the solution. Okay, but what I want to explain with this example is that at the end we are using 3 layers of APIs. We have the experience API, process API, and system API. But for every single of these artifacts, there is a reason for that. I mean, it's not that we have created a laboratory API, system API. Yes, because it's in the no, it's in the manual. In that case, it was not required. Okay, and the same, for example, with the consumer application. Okay, we have only created experience API in the cases in which there is a business case for that. Okay, okay. So just for I don't know if there is any other question, any other comment on this.
Oh, I think we are good. So yeah.
Okay. Okay, so just wrapping up, I think that these are, in my opinion, no, the key takeaways. No, so always focus on creating core and business APIs, and try to invest some time before creating those APIs in thinking about which are the functional domains or the business capabilities in which those APIs has to be associated. Okay, that's the most important thing. Okay. Those core or business API will be created, no, as what MuleSoft is, no, is calling like process API, although process maybe is not the best name. Okay, you can consume directly those process API, and those process API can directly interact with some backends. It's not a problem for that. Okay, never, if there is a backend that is exposing a very good API, a RESTful API, never create a system API just as a wrapper, unless you have a very good reason for that, like security, like no static IPs, things like that. Okay, never try no to reinvent the wheel. Okay, and however, there are a lot of cases, and some of that has been also part of the conversation, in which we need absolutely to create system APIs and experience APIs, specifically for whitelisting, for handling with fields that you want to hide, new tokens, or especially for the backend for front-end pattern. No? And in that case, I don't know if today data graph is mature enough. No, probably yes, but I hope that in the next years we'll see more and more backend for front-end implemented as a GraphQL. Okay. If you want to read more about this, I would recommend you to read a couple of articles. This one, for example, the first one is about how to organize APIs around business domains and capabilities, but never around tools. Okay, because the domains are going to be there forever. For a bank, you are always going to have loans, deposit accounts, cards, but maybe a particular ERP or a particular CRM maybe in 5 years disappears. However, the business domains are going to be there forever. So try to organize always the core APIs around business domains. I will recommend you also to read a PDF. I think that is a 30 or 40 pages PDF, and this one is awesome. It's very well written. It's from this company, NS3. And you will read there a lot of the same concepts and recommendations that I had given in this workshop. Okay, and you will find there recommendation about what has to be in a system API, in a process API, in an experience API, and also in which specific case, as we had seen this in this workshop, we can remove one of the layers. And also, finally, there is a blog entry even in the MuleSoft blog. Okay, in which they explain other 5 integration patterns, in which they don't use always the same 3 layers. And you will read in that article how they explain when to make a direct call to the process layer, or when maybe to make a call from the experience layer to the system layer. I think that there is a lot of combinations that are explained in that article. Okay. Okay. So, there are any questions?
Like no, like there's no question. Like we got a good feedback on the chat window, so it was a great session. Like people told like generally people get bored with the session, but they are saying like we are still having the same energy till the end. So that's a great session, Jos. So I really appreciate. So
Okay.
I even also like the session. Like we have learned a lot of things like about the API-led connectivity, how we can use that API-led connectivity, when we can use, what are the different pattern for API-led connectivity. So I
Okay.
think people are happy with your session, and they you can check the chat window. They are already
Okay.
mentioning a lot of good comments on the chat
Okay.
window. So thanks Josh for taking the time out and giving the session in the Surat, and looking forward for more session from you. And by the way, like Josh is the ambassador, and he's also participating with his articles and a lot of knowledge in the MuleSoft community, and like also giving the session on various meetup groups. Thank you, Josh, once again.
Okay.
Nitish,
Thank you.
it's now up to you. You can quickly run the quiz. I want to go outside in the next 5-10 minutes. So yeah,
Sure, sure, Jackie.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
very
you,
much,
Joe.
Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
Ravi.
Thank you.
Hi,
yeah,
Nitish.
Ravi,
You
you are
can
saying
go.
something.
Yeah, Josh, really, we appreciate. See, by looking at the title, I thought